Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, brought to you by VoteProPot.com. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to VoteProPot-Cast. I'm Phil Adams.
I'm Jay Britton.
And I'm Andrew McCready's.
Today, we'll hear Jay's conversation with Dr. Rick Weyback, a neurosurgeon down in Florida who is now filling a very important need as a cannabis doctor. We're going to hear about new news over the last few days from Attorney General Barr, who says that he prefers the new States Act over the current prohibition. Also, the numbers are in on cannabis use, and Jay's got them. Is hemp really all that it's made out to be? Andrew has some answers on that. But first, Andrew has a story about New York City Council relaxing strict old marijuana testing regulations.
New York City Council just announced that they passed a bill prohibiting marijuana testing being required as part of the hiring process to work for the city. In addition to that, they're banning the city from requiring marijuana testing for people on probation. Now, this is huge. For so long, people got out of jail, and if they were living on the straight and narrow and trying to do the good job and they smoked a little weed and do anything else wrong, and they tested positive, they'd send them back to jail. And that's just, man, we have better things to do.
Absolutely.
Right, and some people work for the. I mean, most people who work for the city they're not doing, high tech or or dangerous jobs. They're working in sanitation or street repair and just all kinds of stuff. I mean, why can't these people smoke a doobie? I mean, come on.
But what if they what if they drive a bus for the or public transportation? I wonder does that.
Well, as long as they're not high when they do it,
right?
How many? I mean, it's okay to drink. I mean, if you could be an alcoholic and drive a bus, just as long as you're not drunk while you're driving the bus.
That's right. That's right.
That's really good news.
That's good news for the Gotham dwellers.
The Public Safety Committee Chairman, Donovan Richards, said, this bill will close one trap door that trips people up. Too many people come out of prison trying to do better, and they get busted for marijuana and end up going back to jail. And it just sets them back. This is it's unacceptable. I mean, even everyone's saying this.
Excellent.
And
agreed.
And it's interesting about just New York it seems they're really coming around. And they're starting to pass legislation to legalize recreational or adult use, I should say. But in the meantime, it turns out New Yorkers are flocking to Massachusetts to buy weed. And it is becoming a very common thing that they say, thousands of people cross the border every day. Well, so far they said they posted 15,000 New Yorkers have gone to Massachusetts to buy weed because you can buy. You have to show an ID. You can be found. You just have to be old enough.
That's what I was going to say. So you can go into Massachusetts from any state and
take it back to D.C.
So where is all that tax money going? Is that going to New York? Is that going to Massachusetts?
That's right.
No, it's going to Massachusetts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. That's awesome news. And we have a little bit of, I would say, semi-good news here. Last week, Attorney General William Barr, you remember him, he's the guy who looks like Roseanne's husband.
Yeah, John Goodman, yeah.
A sober John Goodman.
With Harry Potter glasses. He appeared before the Senate Appropriations Committee regarding the Justice Department's 2020 budget. And during that appearance, he made a very significant concession. He said basically that although he is personally in favor of federal cannabis prohibition, he does acknowledge that his position is politically becoming more and more untenable. Mm-hmm. So now the listeners will probably remember last episode we talked about the proposed States Act, the Strengthening the 10th Amendment through Entrusting States Act, which basically says that the federal government would recognize the legalization of cannabis within various states' laws that have legalized it, and will not intervene to countermand those. So, and Attorney General Barr says that rather than continue with the current federal state, conflict over legalization laws, Barr said he would be in favor of just leaving cannabis policy up to the individual states. I think that's a pretty strong move, especially considering how far we've come from Uncle Jeff and good people don't smoke marijuana.
Do you think President Trump directed him to kind of mention that in the hearings? No?
No. I don't think Trump's got a strong opinion either way.
You don't?
I think he was asked about it, and he gave a reasonable and honest answer. It's not practical, really. I mean, unless you want to be real draconian about this, to go in and say, I don't care what the states are legalizing, we're going to bust everybody.
Right.
No, you can't. He's recognizing the lay of the land here.
Well, the toothpaste is out of the tube. The toothpaste is out of the tube. I mean, they can't put it back in now, and everyone realizes it. And to even maintain that position that they're, it's still against the law, and you should be worried that we might come and bust you is ridiculous. And also one other thing, I think Burr looks more like a straight Elton John.
Okay.
Well, yeah, Elton John nowadays, yeah,
without the hair plugs.
So now we're going to hear the first part of Jay's conversation with Dr. Rick Weyback from Florida.
Today on VoteProPot-Cast, we've got Dr. Rick Weyback. Dr. Rick is a clinical research-oriented physician, specifically interested in neuropsychiatry, neuroanatomy, neurocritical care, traumatic brain injury, psychosomatic disorders, and novel neo-psychiatric therapies using psychoactive drugs. Dr. Weyback, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Give us some background. How did you get into cannabis medicine? And tell us about your practice, Dr. Jane.
So it's actually a pretty long and winding circuitous route, but I'll give you the 30-second overview. So I had actually originally started doing basic science research, like benchtop research, or related to the endocannabinoid system. Back in 2006, as an undergrad, we were actually inducing strokes in rats, and then giving them synthetic cannabinoids to see what sort of neuroprotection was afforded by these, and that's actually what. One of the big patents that the U.S. government holds on cannabinoids. But I eventually pursued my first love, which was neurosurgery. So I specifically sought out to specialize in neurotrauma, spine trauma. I really liked working on kids, so craniofacial surgery, especially in the neurotrauma side, especially with also brain tumors. I did have the opportunity to actually prescribe, patients Marinol, which is a synthetic cannabinoid-based medication, and not a lot of hospitals, especially in the Deep South. I was in South Carolina. Not a lot of hospitals actually have access to it. Well, luckily we did, and I just saw great results on the patients that we did actually give it to. It wasn't just brain tumors. It was even patients who were having, very long segment scoliosis repairs. But, because of how intensive the surgery was, they weren't eating. And really, I don't blame them. When you have a 3-foot scar on your back, eating's probably the last thing you want to do.
Sure.
But they all really benefited from it. So, my wife got sick, and so I had to take a step back from neurosurgery, and so I ended up just kind of doing just some health and wellness, like men's health type stuff, and just going back through, honestly, just looking at all like the previous research stuff that I had been doing on my laptop, I came back to the original work that I had done, and I was like, I'm still really interested in this stuff. It's still really cool, and especially down here in Florida, it was really gaining a lot of momentum. So I said, you know what, let's just actually, let's take a look at it. Long story short, I actually got my license through the state of Florida to recommend cannabis, not like for a specific business. It was just for, if any of my, health and wellness patients needed it, and, started doing some market research about it, and then finding out that it's just such a bad system down here that we decided we needed to do something about it.
So how did Dr. Jane come about? And tell our listeners what Dr. Jane is.
It was basically my little pet project. Like I said, I got my license through the state just to help out whatever patients I already had. And the way it works in Florida, like most states, any physician that gets their license to evaluate and recommend patients for medical cannabis, they get put on a public registry. And the whole point of that is to make it easier for patients to find and connect with these physicians. But what really happens is investors find you. And I mean, dead serious.
Interesting.
So, so we were getting, my wife and I were getting phone calls, 4 or 5 times a day from all of these different investors. And finally we said, what, screw it. Let's just, let's go put on a suit and tie and go hear one out and see what happens.
Sell out and be corporate, right?
Yeah,
what does that tell you about the cannabis business, that you've got investors calling you just because you've got a license to prescribe?
It's definitely a double-edged sword, and I think probably the easiest way of looking at it is looking at John Boehner, the guy who was so vocal in his in his stance against anything having to do with cannabis and, the drug war in general. All of a sudden he gets out of office and, oh yeah, sure. Sounds good. Let's cash in on it. What we ended up actually doing was we meaning my wife and I, my wife's a psych nurse. And so we actually went to hear one of these, investor pitches from what turned out to be the largest and most successful cannabis exclusive clinic in Palm Beach County. And when we got there, I promise you, I'm not exaggerating, horrifying conditions. This place was it was a converted Denny's. I'm pretty sure it hadn't been cleaned since it was a Denny's. It was used IKEA furniture. There were hemp posters all over the walls, looked like a college dorm room. The floors were filthy. The two owners, they're very nice guys, but they're used car salesmen, not exaggerating.
Really? Yeah.
I'm like, what on earth do you guys know about medicine?
Yeah.
And so they took the two of us back to their quote unquote corporate headquarters. And keep in mind, both Katie and I are in, business professional dress. I'm in a suit. She's in, a skirt suit. And they take us back to the corporate headquarters, which is actually the bathroom. And there's a desk.
Great.
There's a desk in the bathroom, and it's next to the handicap stall, which had the panels taken out. So it's just desk and toilet.
Are you being serious right now?
I am being 100% serious, man.
That's a hell of a presentation on their part. So you were sold immediately, right?
I was
Sign me
pretty
up.
sure I needed a hepatitis booster. So, I mean, Katie and I were just like, this has to be a one-off. There's no way on earth that it's actually like this. And the more we started looking at other places, the more it was the norm rather than the exception.
Wow. So that's how Dr. Jane came about.
Yeah. I mean, the both of us have always been involved in, quality improvement, quality assurance, whatever hospitals we've been at. And so we just kind of approached it that way and said, well, there's no way in earth that I would ever have one of my patients or family members go to one of these places. So why don't we just take the middleman out and I'll go to them? resonated incredibly strongly with all of my patients. I see them wherever they are, their home, their office. I've seen patients on their boats. I've seen patients on the sidelines at Dolphins games. It's me. I'm always professionally dressed. There's no giant hemp leaf on my car. It's the biggest thing is
no tie-dye t-shirt or
exactly. No, it's like, no, I'm approaching this exactly how I've always approached everything is I'm a physician. My, respect for patients' privacy comes above everything else. And I'm going to try to provide them the best care that I possibly can.
What kind of medical conditions do you see most often? What kind of ailments or
in medical cannabis in general, you're going to see, your chronic pain, your, generalized anxiety, your PTSD. I have a little bit of a niche practice because of my background in neurosurgery. So, we have a very large Parkinson's patient cohort here in Palm Beach County, and coupled with the Alzheimer's organization here, I get referred these patients that literally can't walk, and because I've had the privilege of drilling into these people's heads and putting electrodes deep down inside, I have a little bit of a different understanding of the disease process. So I do a lot with functional movement disorders as well.
What kind of results are you seeing?
So overall, I'm seeing fantastic results. The thing that I always echo with my patients, which was echoed with me going through training, was the intervention has to be appropriately matched to the appropriate patient. Meaning, if somebody is complaining of a headache, I'm not going to put screws in their back, right? So you have to match the right therapy with the right patient. And so when you do that in whatever specialty you're doing, in general, you're going to have good results. So, cannabis is not for everyone from a medical standpoint. But when you really take the time to look at what medications, say a Parkinson's patient is on, see what kind of interventions they've had, really tease out, is this actual Parkinson's disease, or is this, is this Parkinsonism? Is this normal pressure hydrocephalus? A lot of these things tend to get mixed up in the, especially in the beginning stages. So it's come out that I've gone out to see a patient. I go, actually, you don't have the problem that you asked me to come see you for. You actually have something else.
So that was the first half of my discussion with Dr. Weyback. I found it kind of interesting, guys, where he talked about the conditions of the clinics, the cannabis clinics as they are now in Florida, certainly in southern Florida where he is. It'd be interesting to hear.
The word deplorable comes to mind.
Right. It'd be interesting to hear from some of our listeners that are in that area, whether or not they agree. And we'll play the second half of that interview later in the show.
Well, I see in Maryland when they legalize medical, a lot of the dispensaries here and the medical clinics, you go in and they're very professional. You really look like you're going into a doctor's office.
Is that right?
Yeah, very modern, very clean. And I know when I was in Colorado, I went to a few dispensaries, and I went to one that was like this old house, and you kind of felt like the floor was going to break underneath you.
Yeah. I've been.
I was with a friend of mine who has. She taught one of the some of the seminars out there. She was an expert. She's been to hundreds and hundreds of dispensaries. And we walked in. She looked at me and sort of rolled her eyes and went, "Let's go somewhere else."
Yeah. So
there's place. The industry. Some people got into it and they're flying by the seat of their pants. And they're setting up pretty, second, third rate operations.
Well, I'm sure that'll change as some of these bigger companies come into the markets and they're more stabilized.
Well, we saw it in California when they legalized. What happened was there were some dispensaries that at the time were operating they were following the law, but under the new law, legalizing it recreationally and zoning and a more comprehensive law, turns out a bunch of these establishments were no longer operating under the law. They had to be closed down. Now, that happened all across Canada as well. So that's I think, what's going to happen. This
is a legitimate role for government to take in this, is establishing and imposing, health standards on this sort of thing, as opposed to just deciding for everybody what's good for them and forcing them into that block.
Well, I think the industry is going to do that. I think the industry is going to sort of police itself there. I think if you want to be in business, you got to have a clean, professional,
right?
Nice looking operation.
Forces.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I wonder how many of these guys, women, people who started these clinic or these cannabis businesses are out of cash by the time they open their store because they spend so much money getting their license and their permits and
Right.
Seriously, they got to make some money so they can put it. Because I have seen stories about about dispensaries in areas where they start out like a shack, and within a year they're a nice establishment. But it just takes a while to raise the capital, I guess. I don't know.
Well, what I've heard is what's happened. Some people opened up with not enough capital, and so they had to raise additional capital, and to do that, they had to give up equity. And
right.
And I've heard of situations where people started these businesses and ended up, being a minority shareholder.
Right. Well, that's what's going to happen with these big companies coming in, sure.
If anybody has any stories about that or experiences or other ideas about this aspect of cannabis use, we really would love to hear from you. Send us a message. You can go find us at VoteProPot.com.
You can send us an email at VoteProPot@gmail.com or call our message line at 240-257-2441. Leave us a message.
And if you leave us a message on the message line, we'll put you on air. And also, please like and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Just do a search for Vote Pro Pot. It turns out in California now, since they've rolled out the legal adult use market, what happened with the established medical market is having issues adjusting to the new regulations. One of the things, the laws they did pass was they allowed, because certain jurisdictions are saying they don't want dispensaries in their location, like dry cities from prohibition, from alcohol prohibition.
Right.
There's still cities in the United States to this day that are dry. Anyway, and that's fine. If the majority of the people in that community don't want dispensaries, they can vote it out.
Their prerogative.
But that doesn't mean a truck, transporting cannabis legally can't drive on the streets in their community.
That's crazy.
Okay. So they passed a law also saying that home delivery is allowed statewide. They can deliver anywhere in the state. Now, 24 cities in the county of Santa Cruz just filed a lawsuit against the Bureau of Cannabis Control and trying to prevent door-to-door deliveries in their communities. Now, what happens is they're saying, that first of all, they're saying it's going to increase criminal activity in our community, which personally I think, well, if they can't buy it legally, they're going to buy it illegally. So if you stop from delivering, you're just enabling, you're encouraging illegal activity.
Right.
So it looks like it's going to be in court, and they're going back and forth. But what do you guys think about this?
Well, we did a story on that.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, we did a story a few weeks ago on a different jurisdiction in California, the same kind of idea. But how do they deliver this stuff? Do you know, Andrew? Do they use UPS or the mail
let's
service?
See. I've had weed delivered to me only a couple hundred times.
No, I mean legally.
In New York. Well, actually, legally, what you'll do is you get on the computer and you place your order.
I mean, who delivers it?
Send and it'd be like ordering a pizza. You're probably getting an email.
Like ordering a sandwich. Yeah.
But I'm saying if the United States Postal Service or the UPS is delivering, how the hell do they know who? The truck's pulling up and dropping off a package.
U.S. Postal Service won't get into it because it's still federally illegal.
Right. They can't. And you
they
never
can't get into it.
So they do have their own delivery service for each. I see. I guess.
Yeah.
A guy on a bike.
Right. Okay.
Well, they have cars. They'll have a fleet of cars. That's what they're doing.
I see. So they're worried about
in urban areas. They might have bicycles, but I doubt that it'll be
robbing them or something because that's just stupid.
Well, you don't put the name of the dispensary on the side of the car,
right? Exactly.
Yeah. And also, that's what
you got weed.
Talk about the perfect job for a retired cop.
Yeah. Right.
Sure.
Right.
Perfect job for him. Man, they can deliver it. What the hell? And he can carry a gun.
You have any?
Did you tip your driver, Andrew, when he delivered? Did you give him a tip?
No. Something I never did.
A bud.
But I did. After a while, I always make iced tea and lemonade, and give him something to drink. Sometimes I had,
nice.
like, if I was cooking something, I'd give him something to eat. But, and I got to give him Christmas cards. I think we gave him a Christmas gift, too.
He knew you
After a
so
while, he
well.
becomes like a friend, man. The guy's like a friend. I mean, you literally sit down, you end up talking for like 15 minutes just about personal stuff, and then you go, oh, hey, what do you got?
Well, that's
And he would
interesting.
open up like a
the
little
people
briefcase.
in your neighborhood.
Where do you think this lawsuit will go, Andrew? You have any feel for that?
I have a feeling that they can't, because how are they going to state a law that you just can't enter the community, carrying it?
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do that,
Right.
I could see them. They could do it. I'm sure they could pass a law, but enforcing it's going to be tough. And again, it's going to be ineffective. And I can't, at some point, this is the United States. Well, I mean, I should be able to free to do. If I'm not bothering you, fuck you.
Yeah, right.
There is a lot of data coming in on cannabis use, legal and illegal. And Jay's got some of them. What do you got, Jay?
I'm looking at a report here from Market Watch by Liberty Vitert. I believe that's how you pronounce the name. And it's got some interesting statistics in it, talking about tax revenues and sales and so forth. It starts out here. In 2018, Colorado legal pot sales topped $1.2 billion. That's billion with a B, fellas. And the state pulled in $270 million in taxes from that. So you compare that to the approximately $45 million the state collected in tax on alcohol. So again, the comparison: they collected $45 million last year on the sales of alcohol. They collected.
Now, is this all the states combined?
No,
or a
this is just
particular
Colorado, and they collected
just Colorado.
So
okay.
it's $45 million for alcohol, $270 million for pot.
Now, what were the gross sales of alcohol? Because it's taxed at a lot lower rate.
Later on in this article, it talks about that. I'll get to that in a second. A study from Georgia State University found that alcohol sales fell by 15% in states where only medical marijuana had been legalized, and by 20% in counties where recreational cannabis is legal. So that's the answer to your question. Sales,
that's good news.
Alcohol sales is down 20% where you have legal adult use. Another similar stat is in California. We talked about this before, where California sold $345 million when they had projected $645 million. So they sold, just over half of what they anticipated, largely because of the tax, because the tax is so high.
Because the black market's still thriving?
Yeah. They can't compete with the black market because the tax is driving the price up so high. New Frontier Data, a cannabis data website, predicts the legalized cannabis market will grow to $25 billion by 2025. So that's only, 5 years, 6 years from now, it's going to be, that's huge, that is huge.
Now, I wonder if that's based on current legal status among the states, or if that incorporates projections about. So whatever that number is, it's not going to be big enough if more
states are legal.
States and localities legalize, that number is going to blow out.
That's exactly. And this is based on the status as of now. Studies have shown that youth marijuana use actually decreases in states where medical marijuana has been legalized. Researchers guess that this may be due to kids viewing marijuana as medical instead of recreational, while other studies have suggested that legalizing marijuana can lead to increased use. This could simply be reporting bias. Andrew, you've talked about this. You've talked about this.
When they legalize cannabis, cannabis use goes up. Well, yeah, because you can buy it legally now, and it's gone up. I think statistics show in the age group 60 and above is where that's where the majority of the sales is, the largest growing market. But also, I can remember when we were kids. Imagine, put yourself back when you were a teenager. Mm-hmm. You were told when to wake up, when to go to school, when to go to the bathroom, when to eat. You had to ask permission to go to the bathroom, when to do this. So kids, they want to rebel. They want to do something on their own. And
nobody told me when to go to the bathroom. I just went.
Well, even when you're sitting in class.
I'm just saying.
When you're sitting in class?
No.
Well, you had to raise your hand. I got to use the bathroom. Well, we see what happens. I can remember back then thinking, working out with my friends, and you would covertly plan to get some weed and where you're going to party and you hide. It was sort of this covert thing was half the excitement.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think you're right, Andrew. I think you're right.
Yeah.
And now that it's no big deal, the teenagers are going, well, that's not a way we're going to rebel. Now we're going to start tattooing and piercing ourselves.
Exactly.
Right. But now everybody's doing that. So it's,
Which is probably as harmful as cannabis.
it's like I'm a rebel and so are all of my friends.
Yeah, well, this article is, again, it's on Market Watch. You can find it if you look it up, Liberty Vitert. But it's a fun article. There's a lot of stuff in it.
I think one of the things we glean from this is that whatever the statistics about, use, we talk about, Andrew, you pointed out that, someone saying that, since cannabis was legalized in Colorado, there have been more accidents attributed to cannabis use. Well, that's because they're reported.
Yeah.
That's because it's legal. When this stuff comes out into the open, and comes out from the shadows, you can attribute all kinds of things that you couldn't before, and that's going to skew the statistics. So I think we take those new statistics with a grain of salt to a large extent, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, I think this is actually an opinion piece, and this kind of sums up part of what you were saying, Phil. The last paragraph here, and it talks about crime. Legalized marijuana does seem to have an effect on the justice system. According to the FBI stats, in 2017, there were 659,000 marijuana arrests in the U.S. There were also 1.2 million violent crimes with victims, but only 518,000 arrests for these same violent crimes. So you see where those numbers are going? This means that there are more than 700,000 victims who have suffered without justice. In states with legalized recreational marijuana, police now no longer spend time on marijuana arrests and can spend more time solving violent crimes. So they found that where cannabis has been legalized, there's a higher rate of arrests for violent crimes. In other words, you have X many reported, and the percentage of those that are solved has gone up, is much higher where you have legal cannabis because they don't have to spend their resources and their time arresting people for buying an ounce of weed.
Well, so less people are getting arrested. They're spending less time processing and arresting people for simple cannabis use, which in a lot of cases the prosecutors don't even prosecute,
and it gives them time to go arrest.
And taking illegal guns and violent criminals off the streets. Seems like a win-win to me.
Yeah, you got it, brother.
Well, those are some of the numbers on cannabis use. And I'd be interested to see what some of the numbers are for hemp production now that the Farm Bill has passed. Andrew, I think you have some information about the hemp industry.
Since we started this podcast, I've been saying how I think the industrial hemp industry is going to one day be bigger than medical and adult use cannabis combined. So now a lot of people say... are talking about, hemp is this miracle thing. It's going to it's a cure-all for everything. But I'm here to talk about, like, from hemp fabric to hemp plastics, is hemp really able to do all these things? Okay, now, hemp is one of the most fibrous plants ever made, ever known, I should say. Now, hemp is very good for making fabrics and plastics. And, for example... one of the things you can make out of hemp is toilet paper. Americans use 100 rolls of toilet paper a year per person. That's 57 squares a day, which translates to 35 billion rolls of toilet paper. Now, hemp takes 70 days can take 70 days to mature, versus hardwood, which takes 20 to 80 years. Hardwood has 30% cellulose, which is what is used to make paper. Now, which means 70% has to be removed, and they use a chemical process to do that. Now, hemp is 85% cellulose, and what's left over can be used for other purposes. So whereas it takes 30, or it could take anywhere from 20 to 80 years to grow an acre of hardwood, now hemp, 1 acre of hemp equals 4 acres of hardwood. So... you just do the math. It's ridiculous to continue chopping
just
down.
the nature of the plant.
It's amazing,
right? And also it's cleaner. Now paper mills pollute water, air, and pollute the land. Where hemp is antimicrobial and it has very good I think for toilet paper, you'd want antimicrobial personally. I think that's a good thing. But they also have antimicrobial also makes it good for fabrics and soap. Hemp is a very impressive fabric base. So you can make T-shirts out of it that will last longer than regular cotton T-shirts. And cotton is another thing that is not very effective crop. I mean, it's hard to process. It really depletes the soil. And so hemp would make a better alternative to cotton.
Now, is it just as comfortable?
Yeah. Now, hemp also makes a great composite high-end plastic, which automakers are using for like dashboards and interior door panels and things. Now, BMW, Jaguar, and Mercedes uses hemp.
No kidding. I didn't know.
Wow.
Now, as far as a food concern, hemp is also high in omega-3, 4, 6, and 9 acids. And it's full of antioxidants and essential nutrients. Hemp has actually been placed on the superfood category. I read somewhere that if you had a diet that comprised a great majority of it of hemp, that not only could you survive, you could actually thrive. And also another use for hemp is construction. I think this is going to be big. You can use hemp as a replacement for wood or petroleum products. Hemp is also good for the environment, and it's easier to maintain. It's antimicrobial, so you'll have less mold issue. Hemp is excellent for farmers because, for starters, all the different applications. Now, we can have farmers growing, and they also have a cash crop that's almost guaranteed to be bought by any number of people who could use it.
Right.
So, and also, hemp can remove heavy metals from the soil. And
I didn't know that.
Yes, and it also replaces valuable nutrients into the soil. And it does something called the process of remediation, where a farmer can take unusable dirt and turn it into fertile soil using hemp. Hemp can also remove radioactive waste from soil. Hemp is cheap, durable, biodegradable, and outside of the medical use, it has an incredible future, I think. Now, hemp some people might not call it a panacea, but it's damn close.
Well, now we're going to get back to Jay's conversation with Dr. Rick Weyback, Florida neurosurgeon, who is providing a very important service.
I see on your resume here that you were in the Navy, so you're a veteran. Do you see a lot of veterans or active duty military patients?
I do. I see a large number of veterans, ranging, all the way from the current conflict all the way back to the Korean War. I actually see a lot of law enforcement too. Current and retired law enforcement, and same ailments. Particularly PTSD. It's just so under-recognized, and I'm extraordinarily lucky that, I have my wife's psychiatric background that I can rely on, where, I've done enough psychiatry where I can actually say, no, this isn't just generalized anxiety. You really do fit the picture of a PTSD.
There's still a lot of skepticism, I think, and, a stigma involved with cannabis, as we both know. Do you think that's changing? Do you think it's becoming more accepted to use cannabis as treatment as the patient, especially when you deal with, some older Americans or veterans, who maybe, or law enforcement?
Interestingly enough, it's been my experience that, especially down here in Florida, so, we have the snowbirds that, come for the cold winter months up north. They like to spend it down here, or even just the frank retirees who live down here all the time, who, based on social research, are, they very much hold fast to, conservative anti-drug values. But you actually start, an interesting thing happens. You start going into these retirement communities, these 55 and older. Mm-hmm. And even though that's the outward expression that you get, they can walk you inside and you'll see a bong. Like right there.
Is that right? Yeah.
By far, my biggest challenge and my biggest, smile-inducing moment is actually getting a bunch of these older citizens together and start having this conversation, looking around the room. And,
that's interesting. Yeah.
I've cleared it with them beforehand, but I'm like, I know for a fact that you smoke. and then just leave it
That's
silent, and you see everybody start looking around, and then you see a
really
hand go up in the back and go, "Yeah, I've tried it." I'm like, I know you haven't just tried it. Who else? And then you just see all the hands go up.
We've done a lot of stories on the show about, we're senior citizens for one thing, but also we do a lot of stories about it. There's a lot of research coming out, data, marketing, especially at the number of, senior citizens who use cannabis and who are flocking to it now. And one of the marketing firms did a survey, and they found that senior citizens over 55 spend more money on cannabis in legal states than millennials, which surprised the hell out of me. I
wholeheartedly believe that, especially.
Well, you see it every day, so I suppose you're on the front lines.
I've gone with my patients to the dispensaries, and the only people there that I've ever seen, like under the age of 40, are the employees.
As we all know, Florida just changed the ruling on that, and you can now ingest via smoking, which you couldn't originally. With all these senior citizen types, how do they consume their cannabis?
So the vast majority of them, because they don't, they've never had access to any other forms, they smoke, whether that's mixed with tobacco, whether it's just straight leaf, whether it's, taking bong hits, whatever. That's primarily how they use it. The interesting thing, though, is I would say maybe 5 out of 6 really want to utilize other forms of ingestion, which from a medical standpoint is by far the more preferred way. At least the currently available in North America, with the technology that we have, as far as dry herb is concerned, there's really very, very little controlling how much THC milligrams you actually ingest in a single ingestion. So from a medical standpoint, that makes it very frustrating and difficult to try to titrate that dose.
I would certainly assume that from a medical standpoint, you would prefer to prescribe edibles or tinctures or something that's going to allow you to dose more accurately. Is that the case? I mean, how do you dose smoking?
There are a few devices that are coming out now that will allow you to somewhat dose there, and there's actually a few proprietary, like owned by the dispensary or the MMTC technologies, where they have essentially metered dosing by the cartridge. So the cartridge coupled with the proprietary battery, will heat it to a specific temperature, and they have calculated that each. And it will only allow you to draw so much, so that each draw will deliver, 2.5 milligrams.
Gotcha. So that's vaping essentially then.
Yes. So there are, it's not impossible. It's just, at least in the United States, based on what we are legally allowed to have, it becomes very difficult. Now, if you look at Israel, they have actually just started trialing metered inhaled, like actually fast acting inhaler with THC. So you aerosolize the THC, and that's actually a very valid and very accurate form of dosing. However, in the United States, getting drugs by pure inhalation route is very difficult. Because the FDA has already shot down inhaled, like fast-acting inhaler for insulin several times. It would be fantastic if we could get it here, but I just don't see that happening.
Don't see it happening anytime soon.
Anytime soon.
In your opinion, do you see the Florida legislature sanctioning, recreational adult use anytime soon? Or
define soon?
Well, I mean, like in the next couple of years.
In the next couple of years, yes. I would say within the next 5 years, yes. Before then, I really don't see that happening. Actually, the single adult rec bill was just killed in the Florida State Senate.
Right. As a physician, how do you feel about recreational adult use?
I think that everything has its place. I think that, if you're a person that is looking to adult use as an avenue to self-medicate, I think that's inappropriate for any number of reasons. Probably the number one is, well, let's actually just sit down and figure out what exactly is going on with you, because cannabis might not be the answer, period. You might need something else.
Right.
I think that everything has its own place. I don't think it's really fair to look at, alcohol and tobacco and say, well, if they have it, then you do this. It's like, well, you give a human enough leeway, they're going to bastardize and make everything bad. I do believe that humans are good, but we are animals first and foremost. And whenever you do something that triggers a dopamine release, you're going to keep, pushing that button over and over again. And it's the same thing with, alcohol and tobacco, and same thing happens with cannabis. If you're in a bad situation and this thing makes you feel good, well, you're going to keep doing it over and over again, whether it's an appropriate thing to do or not.
Doc, I really appreciate your time. Why don't you tell folks how they get a hold of you? Are you taking new patients at this time?
Absolutely. I never turn down a patient. So the easiest way to get a hold of me or anyone in our organization is to go right to the website. It's www.Dr. Jane. So it's D as in David, OCTOR, Jane, JANE.net. I put all of my contact information right on the website. You can call, you can text me right from there. You can make an appointment right from there. We also have a store where, I only allow the CBD that I personally vet to be on there. So this is stuff that, I've actually stuck my head in the vat to see that everything is actually kosher, and I know the owners. I've seen all of the COAs. So this is stuff that I put my money where my mouth is, and this is stuff that I'm okay with giving to my family. So, case in point, we're bringing on a company out of New York, Little Pharma, that they're non-GMO, they're kosher certified. But this is fantastic stuff. And this is actually, so in addition to cannabis, I have all of my patients on CBD, because cannabinoid therapy is not just THC. It's not just CBD. It's the whole plant.
I got an update on my Oreos hack. So what happened was, I did the Oreo hack. I put some RSO oil in. I scraped out the filling, put the RSO oil in it, mixed it up, returned it to the cookies, and ate them. And you can really taste the RSO oil. If you like RSO oil, that's fine.
No.
But the nature of Oreos, have you ever eaten an Oreo and then smiled into the mirror?
Yeah.
Well, it kind of sticks to your mouth, I mean, you're tasting that RSO oil. The aftertaste sort of hangs there for a while. So I found there's two things I did. One was you eat two, infused cookies, then you eat like one or two regular cookies and guzzle it down with milk, and it's fine.
And gargle.
But then I did it again. I scraped a bunch out. I added the RS oil, but then I put 2 drops of peppermint oil and a drop of green food coloring, mixed it up. So now I have these green Oreos that are mint flavored. So you can't taste the RSO as much as you could. It's just like a chocolate mint thing. So
they taste a lot better.
Perfect for St. Patty's Day, Christmas, or April 20th.
So I read an article recently that said it's good to start off your day with CBD. A lot of people are starting off their days with CBDs, and it finds that it's not psychoactive. It helps them with their anxiety and stress, which seems to be what some of the major reasons people use cannabis. So what they're saying now is you can put CBD in your coffee, and you can just put butter or oil in there, and it thickens it up, and you might taste it. But I have an idea where any company out there that makes infused beverages or something, you need to make a infused coffee creamer. that in the same packet like a regular creamer, that's 5 milligrams each. So you can start off your day with 5 milligrams CBD in your coffee. Boom.
An essential part of any healthy breakfast. I would like to correct the record from last episode. Last week, you remember, we spoke about the States Act. And during that conversation, I mentioned that erroneously that Doug Collins was the ranking member of the House on the GOP side. That is not correct. He's actually the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. The ranking member in the House, of course, is Kevin McCarthy. So just wanted to make sure we get that right. And folks, if you catch us saying something that ain't quite right, if you have a comment or a correction or an idea or a hack of your own, please do check us out and send us a message. Go to VoteProPot.com.
Or send us an email at VoteProPot@gmail.com. Call our message line at 240-257-2441.
And please like and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Just do a search for Vote Pro Pot.
Wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. But here I am in New York City, hiding out in Central Park, getting kidnapped by the police today sometime before dark. But I wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. The judge looked down upon me, frowned. He said, "Kid, get on your way. Just don't start out your morning with espresso and a J." I said, "I wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day." Hitched on out to Portland, caught a ride up to BC, took the bus over to the neighborhood to have a bowl with my coffee. Now I'm up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. Smoking good old Sensimilla